And now maybe our biggest blessing tonight, I get to welcome up our guest speaker. And Eberts joined JFS in June of 2021 as the Survivors of Trafficking Case Manager, supporting youth and young adult survivors of sex and labor trafficking. Prior to joining the RISC team, Hannah worked with survivors of trafficking domestically in Fort Worth, Texas, as well as internationally through fellowships in Kolkata, India, and Manado, Indonesia. She has led mentoring programs for refugees and immigrant youth that emphasized trauma-informed and trust-based relationships. Hannah received her bachelor's degree in communication sciences and disorders with a minor in child development from Texas Christian University. Hannah, we are so lucky and excited to have you up here to share a bit about JFS and what JFS is doing to support refugees. So the floor is yours.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really thankful to be here with you all tonight. I do want to make this a little bit of an informal conversation. And so we're going to have a time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. But I first just want to talk about JFS. We're actually located right down the street on 16th. But the Refugee and Immigrant Services Department, which is the department that I work at, is housed in Kent, Washington, so we're a little bit farther south. And so our program at the Refugee and Immigrant Services, we work with a broad spectrum of refugees and immigrants. I want to talk about our 4 major teams and then go specifically into my department and the other youth programming that we have. So in the RISC department, or the Refugee and Immigrant Services Department, we work with the traditional refugees. So those are people you probably think about when you think about refugees. It's going to be individuals who are coming from a different country, and they are going to be, picked up by our organization at the airport. We help them find their first apartments. We help them find their first jobs, and really helping holistically all of their needs for their first 90 days. We also have a department to help with employment. Like I mentioned, we help individuals find that first job here in the U.S. We also make sure that they have a career maybe that they would rather be in, or maybe re-enter the career that they had back in their home country. And so we have mentors from the community that help them. Maybe that's doing job skills or learning how to interview to get back into that career that they used to have. Third, we have our civic integration program. And so that helps individuals who come as refugees adjust their status to be green card holders. We also have classes to help them with their citizenship, and we also do all of those applications in-house. And that leads me to talk about our immigration attorney. JFS is really lucky to have an in-house immigration attorney that works alongside case managers to help individuals who are needing extra support with their legal journey. And that is a really unique model that is not really seen anywhere else in the US. And we're really privileged at JFS to be able to have that. And so when we're working with these clients who maybe have immigration status that is more in limbo, we're able to directly refer these clients to the JFS immigration attorney. And then our last program and our last department that I want to speak about is the intensive services team. And that is the team that houses the programs for our most vulnerable communities. These communities might have individuals who have complex medical or mental health needs. Maybe they're single parents. And then that comes to our youth programming. We have an unaccompanied youth program, and we also have a survivors of trafficking program that specifically works with youth and young adults. For our unaccompanied minors, that's an individual who's under the age of 18 who enters the U.S. without a form of legal relief, but does not have a parent or a guardian with them. And so they are often released into the community to a sponsor or an adult who is going to be their caretaker, but that caretaker doesn't have any support from the government, so it's not like a foster care system. They don't have much support and often are already taking care of lots of their own family members, either immediate or their extended family, and that is where JFS is able to support those families to make sure that those kids are getting the services they need. These unaccompanied minors, they're coming from countries from all over the world. We're seeing a lot of our individuals coming from Central and South America. Our biggest country of origin where our kids are coming from is Guatemala currently, but The influx of the clients that we receive often are going along with the conflicts that we're seeing in the world. So during the crisis in Afghanistan back in August of 2021, we were seeing a huge influx of getting clients, unaccompanied minors from Afghanistan. Very similar to the war in Ukraine, we've also had a number of clients who are Ukrainian unaccompanied minors enter our program. The unaccompanied youth program has children that have very complex needs. Often they're coming from environments back in their country of origin that they're fleeing abuse, physical, emotional, sexual abuse. Oftentimes there's neglect from caregivers, and they're coming to the U.S. not just for economic stability or new opportunities, but most, if not all, of our clients are coming to the U.S. for safety and protection. And so it is really key for these kids who, when they're coming to the U.S. and they're looking for that safety and protection, that we have a community that is here, similar to what JFS is doing and a lot of our other partners, to ensure that they are met with open arms and they're met with safety and protection that they came here for. I next want to transition into my program. So I'm the Survivors of Trafficking case manager. And trafficking, as it sounds, a lot of people may have heard this word before. It's in the news quite a bit. You might think of taken, but trafficking does occur to our kids. Sometimes it occurs to them when they're in their home country, and that's why they're leaving. Sometimes it happens to them on their transit from their home country to the U.S. But sadly, and almost most commonly, our kids are experiencing trafficking once they come to the U.S. And so a lot of our unaccompanied minors are released to this sponsor, this caregiver, and they are actually trafficked by that sponsor or by those other people in this community. And so it's really key that JFS, and they've done this very strategically, is that we have our unaccompanied youth program that works very closely with our Survivors of Trafficking program. So when a case manager identifies that a kid is going through an unsafe situation, is being trafficked, they're able to very easily refer them to me, and we're able to help them get into a safer situation, helping them get, legal protections, whether it's we're getting them like protection orders or making sure they have safe housing, they get new identification if they need to sometimes. And so it's very important that we are able to work conjunctually this way. Similar, the Survivors of Trafficking program, we're also having most of our children come from Central and South America, and we do continue to see that to be the trend in the future. And I guess what I want to end this with, I do want to give time for everyone to ask questions, but I do want to share a story about one of our clients that we have worked with. I'm going to refer to my notes just to make sure I don't miss any details. But I feel like this story about the girl that I'm going to share about, it does a very good job showing kind of the all-encompassing care that JFS has with the clients that we're working with. And so back in August of 2021, Amy, a 16-year-old girl, arrived to the U.S. southern border. That is usually where we're seeing most of our kids come through. After a 2-month journey from Honduras by foot and on train. Her journey was not just about distance, but also her immense resilience and bravery. Amy endured sexual and physical abuse from her uncle since the age of 12, who she lived with at home. And unfortunately, when she did try and talk to her mom about what was going on, Amy was blamed and then was kicked out of her home. If that wasn't enough for this poor girl, she faced different types of threats from local gangs due to her father's affiliation with them. Her father had been incarcerated since she was a young girl, so she really didn't know her dad or his involvement in these gangs. Her journey to the U.S. was not just about finding this better life that people often dream about when they think of the U.S., but she was really thinking about escaping the danger and finding protection and safety. Despite the dangerous conditions that she faced while leaving Honduras and coming to the U.S., there was risks of being caught by traffickers, by gangs. She persevered, and she did finally arrive at the U.S. border. Unfortunately, her journey didn't end there. Amy was detained by CBP and was sent to a children's shelter And this is very normal. So most unaccompanied youth children, when they cross the border, they go into a shelter, what that is funded by the federal government. And that is when she was looking, and the caseworkers at the shelter were looking for a suitable sponsor for her to go to. Amy spent 46 days in the shelter. For context, a long time. She didn't have any family, she didn't have any friends in the US, and so these case managers were really struggling to find a place for Amy to go. Finally, they were able to contact a family friend. This individual was Amy's mom's longtime childhood best friend that had moved to the US. This woman and Amy's mom had not talked in years, and so this person was unknown to Amy when she arrived at her home. At this point, this is when our case manager at JFS, Felix, he started working with Amy, and he did all the things that we do with a client. So he, at first, to try and build trust, took her shopping. She got to pick out clothes that she liked. She got to pick out her own backpack, really to build that trust and make her feel like, this is going to be the beginning of her new life. He helped her enroll in school, got her medical benefits, and started taking her to dental and medical appointments that she needed, and really was focusing on helping her, integrate and be stabilized in this new community. Initially, things were going well. For the first 2 weeks, everything was quite stable, but Amy's sponsor soon began to demand that she took care of the sponsor's 3 children, including a 5-month-old infant. And if anyone knows what taking care of a child like that at that age is, it's a full-time job. Amy was expected to take care of the children from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and this left Amy no time to rest. It left her no time to go to school, and eventually she did drop out of school. She would tell her sponsor, I don't want to do this, I want to be here, I want to go to school. The sponsor became very hostile. She threatened Amy to kick her out and be homeless. She threatened to take her to foster care, and she even threatened to call ICE so that she would be deported. If Amy ever said, no, I'm not going to do this, Amy would tell us that her sponsor would withhold the food from her, she wasn't allowed to eat, she withheld access to the cell phone, and the sponsor would make Amy stay in her room. So Amy's situation was really not good, absolute dire, we needed to help. We're very thankful that Felix was there because Amy didn't know anyone in the US at this point. She maybe made a few connections at school, but no one that she felt comfortable to talk about what was happening with. And so thanks to having Felix there and the trust that he built with her, Amy disclosed what was happening to Felix, and Felix talked to me. Felix identified this immediately as trafficking. I was able to work with Amy to help her get into a safer situation. We were able to find her a room to rent with a girl that she did know from school. Amy's priority and Amy's goal was to finish school, to learn English. And so we were able to provide rent for her so she could focus on going back to high school and didn't have to worry about her finances. We were able to connect her to regular mental health services, as obviously the amount of distrust that she had from adults in her life, she needed to heal through those types of things. We were able to get her new technology, so the trafficker and her mom, who was consistently continued to emotionally abuse her over the phone, didn't have the ability to contact her. And Amy's life started to really, to look up. But she still was a 17-year-old girl at this point who was living on her own. And with Felix and I and Amy's cooperation, all 3 of us really advocated for her to enter a highly selective program called an Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program. This program is a foster care that has very comprehensive, very culturally appropriate, linguistically appropriate foster care families that will help these types of refugees or unaccompanied minors who need additional help and don't have family members here. And that was probably my biggest accomplishment at JFS thus far, is seeing Amy get placed with this family, see her after 2 months, and check in on her and see that she was enrolled in school full-time, was taking English classes, she was getting her driver's license, and most importantly, all of those things are important, but a really huge factor is that she's on the road to getting a green card. So that way she'll be able to stay in the US and be able to have that protection here. I loved working with Amy. Working with Amy could be challenging at times, but seeing her succeed and seeing how resilient, how brave she is, and seeing those traits in almost all the clients we work with is such an honor. I feel so grateful to be a part of this work, and I'm so thankful that all of you are so interested in hearing more about the work that JFS is doing with the refugee and immigrant services community. And so I thank you so much for your attentiveness. I would love to share a few ways just to end this before I take questions with ways to get involved. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of ways of basic need items that we need to give our clients, and so we always are taking donations. Sometimes it's fun to pack up backpacks together, whether it's like toiletry items or school supplies, or sometimes we need winter jackets or doing a drive like that. It could be a fun way to get your kids or your grandkids or yourselves involved in kind of doing something together as a community. We also always are looking for volunteers. I'm going to leave a document outside with all different contact information, so you can either contact our volunteer services or whatever the email is on the list. And also, we would love to hear from you. If you can think of a way, or you have a special talent, or you have a special interest that you would love to get involved, we're all ears, and so we would love just to have you be involved in whatever way fits you the best. And with that, I am going to open it up for questions. I feel like I just spoke a lot, like very fast at you, so please let me know if you have any questions. Yes?
I was wondering, how well do you coordinate and communicate with the other nonprofits that are working in the same area?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we have really, really good working relationships with the other organizations. I'm a part of several different task force, and also have very close relationships with other case managers at other organizations. And so I do think that in the Washington area, Seattle specific, there's a lot of coordination and there's a lot of willingness to kind of step in. If one person can't take a case, another person will. And so I'm really thankful to be able to work in a community that we're kind of all working in the same mission, and even if we work at different organizations, that doesn't really impact it too much. Yeah. That's another good question. They do background checks. There's also things called home studies, and so a case manager will go out to the house, or sometimes they'll do video calls to interview all the people that are living in the house. Even with that vetting process, things still happen and kids still fall through the crack. And that's a huge issue that I think the government is trying to figure out how to address. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. I realize I kind of missed that whole area. But yeah, the question was, for unaccompanied minors, once they arrive in the U.S., do they just get to stay here, or are they facing deportation? 96% of our kids in the unaccompanied youth program are in deportation hearings, meaning they have to defend their case in front of an immigration judge. And so as I mentioned or alluded to earlier about our immigration attorney, that's why it's really important that we have that. Unfortunately, our unaccompanied youth program is about 160 kids a year, plus my 30 kids a year. One attorney cannot take all of those cases. And so one of the challenges that we face with our kids is making sure they get connected to legal representation so that this attorney can apply for these benefits so that they can find protection here. I would say most, if not all, of our kids have eligibility to apply for a form of relief so that they can stay in the U.S. So these kids are eligible. It's just difficult to find them representation to actually secure it for them. That's a great question. Thank you.
And are you able to stay after for extra couple of minutes?
Yes, I can stay after, and we can ask more questions. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Can we all say thank you to Hannah?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to hear about your work, Hannah. It's such such important stuff. And I think we aren't always so aware of what's going on. So it's really helpful to hear about it from you. And certainly I'll say we at Temple are exploring more ways to be involved in refugee support and immigrant support. And if you are interested in being part of that work, come talk to me or talk to Rabbi Rumpf. There is a lot that can be done. I know also right now, HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, sort of the Jewish organization that does a lot of refugee work across the country, is calling on people to, you can go to their website, write a letter to President Biden about getting rid of a ban on asylum, because there are a lot of people who need to come to safety. And that is something we can offer. And I think part of why we have a HIAS Shabbat is because it is such a part of our story as Jewish people. And so then it is upon us to help others